Let's face the truth most people don't want to admit. We don't see the full value of something until it's out of our hands. It's only when silence replaces effort, when distance replaces presence, when absence replaces availability, that realization finally hits. Suddenly, the one who barely noticed you when you were around can't stop thinking about you now that you're gone. Why? Because while you were there, your worth was hidden under familiarity, your consistency became expected. Your kindness, your love, your energy, it was always there, so it got filtered out as background noise, but now, it's gone, and that's when the void becomes deafening. That's when the mind replays every moment you stood beside them, every time you gave without asking, and every single thing they overlooked. You're not gone because you were weak. You're gone because you finally got strong enough to choose you. You got tired of begging for attention you always gave, of proving yourself in a space where your soul was slowly shrinking. You didn't vanish to hurt anyone. You left to heal yourself, and now, in your absence, the light you used to shine becomes impossible to ignore. When you're always present in someone's life, your energy becomes part of the environment, almost invisible. Your love, your support, your consistency, your emotional labor, they blend into the background of daily life. You're answering messages, checking in, remembering small details, showing up emotionally and physically, and slowly your presence becomes a given, not a gift. It's not that the other person doesn't care, it's that they've grown used to the comfort of your existence. But the human mind works in patterns, and it often needs contrast to truly appreciate what it had. That contrast only comes when you're gone, when the texts stop, when the energy stops flowing, when the space you used to fill goes quiet. And in that stillness, awareness is born. Suddenly, the warmth you brought is missing. The effort that used to be taken for granted now echoes in the silence. The good morning messages don't come. The emotional safety net you created no longer exists. The constant you provided is now a void, and that absence starts to press against their consciousness in a way your presence never could. They start to feel discomfort, not because you did something wrong, but because they didn't do something right while you were still there. The laughter you shared replays in their mind, but now it's tinged with regret. The loyalty you gave stands out not as a daily comfort, but as a major loss. That's the irony of being someone who gives deeply. People only recognize your worth after you stop giving. Absence has a way of simplifying things, without the noise of daily routine, without your words softening their edges, without your presence balancing their chaos. They are forced to sit in what's left. And often what's left is not enough, not compared to what they had when you were there, and that realization hits hard, because they didn't lose someone average, they lost someone rare, someone who cared in a world where most only take. Someone who remembered the little things, who stood by them even when it wasn't convenient, and now that person is gone. What used to be familiar is now missed. What used to be expected is now desired. What used to be background music is now deafening silence. Your absence wakes them up in a way your words never could. They remember your voice, your patience, your strength, and it dawns on them, not all at once, but gradually, painfully, that they didn't just lose someone who cared. They lost someone who made them better, and maybe they didn't realize it in the moment, but now they do, because absence doesn't lie, it reveals. It strips everything back to what matters. And when you're gone, they're finally forced to confront what they had, what they ignored, and what they may never get back again. Consistent love is one of the most underestimated forces in a relationship. It's the daily presence, the quiet check-ins, the gentle support, the acts of service that require no announcement. It's not flashy or loud, but it's stable. It's the kind of love that holds everything together without asking for praise. And the truth is, when someone receives that consistency long enough, they begin to assume it will always be there. It starts to feel automatic. They stop noticing how often you showed up. They overlook how deeply you cared. Not because they're heartless, but because the human brain normalizes what it experiences repeatedly. And that's where the tragedy begins, because the kind of love you gave, the loyal, steady, unwavering kind, often only gets recognized once it stops. Those good morning texts, the reminders to eat, the emotional check-ins, the small, thoughtful acts, they're easy to overlook when they come like clockwork, but when they stop, when that loving rhythm suddenly disappears, That absence screams, the person who once felt smothered by your attention now feels starved for it. The emotional weight they didn't notice you carrying is now pressing down on them, and what's worse, they don't have the tools to carry it like you did. You made it look easy, because love was your language, but now that your voice has gone silent, they're left in the uncomfortable quiet of their own making. They begin to realize that what they called too much was actually just right, that your persistence wasn't pressure, it was passion, that your attention wasn't control, it was care, and they start retracing every moment they didn't say thank you. Every time they took your consistency for weakness, every time they misunderstood your love as something clingy or needy rather than something solid and rare, it dawns on them that they weren't overwhelmed, they were unready for someone who actually showed up. The heartbreak doesn't come from your absence alone, it comes from the regret that follows it, the realization that they lost someone who loved with intention, with effort, with heart. You didn't disappear to hurt them. You withdrew to heal. You stopped giving because it became clear they were no longer receiving, and that shift, though quiet and graceful, becomes unforgettable. They start to notice the gap between what you were and what they're left with. And that gap gets wider every day you're gone, because no one else quite loves like you did. No one else holds space the way you used to. And now, the consistency they once dismissed is the very thing they crave. This is the pain of taking real love for granted. By the time they understand what they had, it's already gone. And the loss isn't just about missing you. It's about facing the reality that they failed to appreciate the one thing that held everything together, the love that never wavered. You walking away is not rejection, it's rebirth. It's not the end of something, it's the beginning of you stepping into the version of yourself that no longer tolerates emotional effort or one-sided love. You didn't leave to prove a point. You didn't leave to make him suffer. You left because you finally saw the cost of staying where you were not fully valued. You woke up to the truth that love should never require you to abandon yourself. And once you saw that clearly, leaving wasn't a punishment, it was an awakening. There comes a moment where the pain of holding on becomes greater than the fear of letting go. That's the moment you realize that no matter how much you love someone, you can't force them to meet you where you are. You can't teach someone how to care if they're not ready. You can't keep breaking yourself into pieces just to make a relationship whole, and so you let go. Not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring more deeply about yourself. That's the rebirth, that's the evolution. You begin to reclaim every part of yourself that got lost in the chase, in the silence, in the slow erosion of your emotional peace. When you walk away from someone who didn't appreciate you, you're not just ending a relationship, you're ending a pattern. You're breaking the cycle of waiting to be chosen. You're no longer shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's limited capacity to love. You're rising into a space where your needs matter, where your heart is protected, and where your energy is no longer wasted trying to be enough for someone who wasn't ready. And that kind of decision doesn't come from weakness. It comes from radical strength, from the deep knowing that your worth is not negotiable. The world will try to tell you that leaving is giving up, that it means you weren't strong enough to fight, but here's the truth. They don't understand the battles you fought silently, the nights you cried while still loving, the hope you held onto long after the signs told you to let go. You didn't give up easily, you gave everything, and when it became clear that your everything still wasn't seen, still wasn't honored, you finally made the most powerful move of all. You chose healing. You chose peace, you chose growth, and that decision, while heartbreaking, is the beginning of your transformation. You don't need to return to prove anything. You don't need to check if they finally see your worth. Because this is no longer about them. This is about you reclaiming your identity, your voice, your freedom. You walking away isn't the closing of your story. It's the turning of the page, a new chapter. A new standard, a new you, not bitter, not broken, just wiser, stronger, and done apologizing for expecting more than the bare minimum. Realization always follows loss, not presence. As long as you're right there, giving, loving, forgiving, your energy blends into the routine. You become the safety net, the emotional anchor, the one they know will always show up. And because you're always showing up, They never have to question what life feels like without you. But the moment you stop, the moment you step back, pull away, disappear from the emotional landscape, they finally start to feel it, and that's when realization hits like a wave. What they thought was constant is gone, and they never truly appreciated it while they had the chance. People rarely see what's right in front of them until it's removed. When you're gone, they feel the difference in their world, not immediately, maybe not dramatically, but undeniably. It starts in small, unexpected ways. The urge to send a message only to remember you don't answer anymore. The need to talk, but the voice they once took for granted is now quiet. The comfort they used to lean on has been replaced by a cold, unfamiliar space. The realization builds slowly and then all at once. They didn't just lose someone who cared, they lost someone who stayed through things they themselves wouldn't have stayed through. When you were there, your love felt like air, always available, always flowing, invisible but essential. Now that it's gone, they're suffocating without knowing why. They remember the warmth of your presence, the certainty in your loyalty, the depth of your commitment. But memory is a poor substitute for reality. They can replay the moments, revisit your words, even stalk your photos. But none of that brings you back. And it's in that loss that clarity begins to cut through. It's not about missing just anyone. It's about missing you, the one who loved when it was hard, the one who believed in them when they didn't believe in themselves, the one who stayed long after it would have been reasonable to leave, and now they're left to wonder how they didn't see it sooner, how they could have let someone like you slip away without fighting. But realization doesn't come from having. It comes from losing, and your absence is the only thing powerful enough to make them truly see what they once had. That's the painful truth. You gave them the opportunity to appreciate you while you were present, and they chose comfort over awareness. So life gave them the opposite. It gave them a hard pause, a silence where your voice used to live, a space where your energy used to heal, and now every day without you becomes a reminder of what they failed to recognize while you were there. That's the cruel irony. They only get clarity when it's no longer convenient. They see your value when you no longer offer it freely. And the realization, while profound, often comes too late, because you've moved on, you've evolved, and you're no longer looking back to see if they finally understand. Because the moment you walked away, you already knew what they're just now figuring out. You were the rare one, and now you're gone. The version of you that left is never the one that returns. When you walk away, you don't just put distance between you and them. You put space between who you were and who you are becoming. That space becomes sacred. It becomes the ground where your healing begins, where your self-worth takes root, where your standards rise. You are no longer the same woman who tolerated mixed signals, who accepted silence as an answer, who questioned her value every time she wasn't chosen. You left to protect your peace, and in doing so, you grew. And when growth happens, returning to who you were isn't an option anymore. The old you may have ignored the red flags, excused the broken promises, and waited endlessly for effort, but the new you knows better. The new you has boundaries, she has clarity, she doesn't chase, she attracts, she doesn't beg, she walks, she doesn't settle, she elevates. That transformation doesn't happen overnight, but once it begins, it's irreversible. You start moving differently, speaking differently, choosing differently, and what they remember is not who you are now, but who you used to be. They remember the version of you that overextended, that stayed up crying, that gave more chances than were deserved. But that woman doesn't live here anymore. If he ever circles back, what he'll find won't be what he left. He'll be looking for comfort, for familiarity, for the woman who made it easy to be emotionally unavailable. But instead, he'll meet a woman who now chooses herself every single time. The door he once walked through with ease is now guarded by self-respect and discernment, and that realization stings, not because you've become bitter, but because you've become clear. Clear on your worth, your limits, your non-negotiables. You're not punishing anyone. You're simply no longer willing to carry the weight of someone else's indecision, and maybe he'll try to reconnect. Maybe he'll claim he's changed, that he finally understands, that he sees what he didn't see before. But by then, you're no longer the version of yourself that needed to hear those words, because now, your peace matters more than your past. Your future matters more than their apology. You've built something stronger than reconciliation. You've built yourself, and that version of you, the one who walks with her head high, who no longer fears being alone, who recognizes her own light, that version doesn't need to return. Because she's not trying to go backward, she's focused on becoming. So no, you didn't leave to make a statement, you left to make a change, and now that you've evolved, there is no going back to the woman who once settled for less. There is only moving forward, with more power, more purpose, and more love for yourself than you ever thought possible. Because healing doesn't just change how you feel, it changes who you are and who you are now. She's not returning, she's rising. Your worth is not defined by who forgets it, but by how boldly you remember it. When someone fails to see your value, it doesn't mean it wasn't there. It simply means they weren't equipped to recognize or honor it. And too often, we internalize that lack of recognition as a reflection of our own inadequacy. We start to believe that maybe we were too much, or not enough, but here's the truth, you were never the problem. The problem was settling for a space that couldn't hold your fullness. The power is not in being remembered by someone who let you go, it's in you remembering who you are after you walked away. For too long, you may have been measuring your worth through someone else's inconsistent affection. You may have waited for the message, the apology, the validation. You may have shrunk yourself hoping they'd finally see your heart. But now, that part of you is done waiting, because the moment you realize your value is not up for negotiation, everything changes. Your energy shifts, your standards shift. You stop trying to be chosen and start choosing yourself every single time, and that, right there, is your breakthrough. This isn't about bitterness, it's about boundaries. You're no longer entertaining connections that make you question your own significance. You're no longer tolerating lukewarm love that leaves you doubting your worth. You've learned that when someone doesn't honor you, the answer is not to give more, it's to step back, to walk, to remember who you were before they made you forget. That remembrance is not just healing, it's transformational. Because once you see your own value clearly, you never let anyone else treat you like a maybe again. And ironically, it's in the moment when you stop trying to prove your worth that people finally begin to feel it. They feel your absence. They feel the space where your light used to be. They feel the energy that no longer surrounds them. And by then, it's not about whether they remember you. It's about how much you've changed in the process. You're no longer trying to fit into places where your value was overlooked. You're building a life where your worth is self-sourced, not externally granted. So whether they come back or not, whether they ever realize what they lost or not, you're already winning. Because your value isn't in their hands anymore, it's in yours. You don't need to be remembered to feel worthy. You just need to remember who the hell you are. And once you do, there's no going back. Only forward, toward more peace, more purpose, and more powerful love, starting with the one you now give yourself. Thank you for staying with this message all the way through. The heart of everything you've just heard is this: your absence often teaches people what your presence never could. You spent so much time showing up, loving fully, giving deeply, hoping that they'd see you, not just glance, but really see you. And when they didn't, you thought it was a reflection of you. But the truth is, sometimes people can only recognize your worth once it's no longer within reach. And by the time they realize what they lost, you've already started finding yourself again. Leaving wasn't weakness, it was strength. It was the moment you stopped choosing pain over peace, confusion over clarity, and emotional crumbs over consistent love. When you walked away, you didn't just create space in their life. You created space in your own for healing, for growth, for self-respect to take root again. You began the journey of reclaiming your voice, your worth, and your power. That moment was not just a goodbye. It was a rebirth, a turning point where the woman who once settled for less no longer lived at the mercy of someone else's inability to value her. And let's be clear, this transformation wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about hoping he'd hurt or miss you or feel your absence. It was about you, about choosing you for once, about ending the cycle of emotional dependence and stepping fully into self-worth. And whether or not he ever comes to terms with what he let go, that's not your responsibility. You're not here to be understood in hindsight. You're here to be respected in real time. And if someone couldn't do that while they had you, they don't deserve the evolved version of you who finally learned to love herself without apology. So if he finally realizes your worth after you've gone, let it be a lesson for him, not a burden for you to carry. You don't owe anyone access just because they now feel your value. You are not a revolving door for people who only come back once they feel your absence. You are a whole, healed, growing woman, and your life must reflect that truth. Keep moving forward, keep choosing peace, keep honoring the voice inside you that finally said enough. And remember this above all, your worth was never tied to who saw it. It was tied to you seeing it. You don't need to wait for someone else's realization to validate your decision to walk away. The most powerful move you ever made was stepping into your own light and refusing to dim it again for anyone who couldn't handle its brilliance. That's where your power lies, and from this point forward, may you never again forget it. Thank you for allowing yourself to be present for this message, not just with your ears, but with your heart. If you've made it this far, it means you're on a journey most don't have the courage to take, the journey back to yourself, and for that, I honor you. Every step you take away from what hurt you and toward what heals you is a step toward your power, your peace, and your purpose. You are not alone. There are millions of women waking up every day, learning to stop apologizing for their strength, their standards, and their silence. You are one of them, and your evolution is not just necessary, it's unshakable. Keep choosing yourself even when it's hard. Keep walking even when the past calls you back. Keep rising even when no one claps for you. The applause will come later. Your peace is the reward now. So as we close this space, I want you to carry this with you. Your absence is not emptiness. It's power, it's proof that you love deeply, but you now love wisely. Anyone who can't meet you where you are no longer deserves access to where you're going. Don't ever doubt that. Thank you for showing up for you. Thank you for choosing your worth over your wounds. Thank you for being brave enough to grow, to walk away, to evolve. Your next chapter is already unfolding, and it's going to be written in the ink of strength, clarity, and self-love. Until next time, take care of your heart, protect your peace, and never forget who you are. Goodbye for now, and remember, the best is not behind you, it's just ahead.